What do you think happens to faith when we base it on a false belief or a false idea or an untruth? What's going to happen to that what's going to happen to our belief?
So what Mary's saying is, if you put a faith in something that ends up not being God's truth, what finishes up happening?
Like, my parents are all-knowing. When I'm 3, I might put faith in that. What happens to that faith eventually? Lorleen had her hand up.
Yeah.
I become disillusioned.
Well, no, it's even worse than that, actually.
I get angry.
No, I'm not talking about your personal emotional experience. What I'm saying is, what happens to the belief?
What happens to the faith, the thing?
If you pass the mic
Back
behind?
to Glenda, yeah.
Yep.
I think it becomes arrogance.
Well, it does, but it even gets worse than that. And it's not an emotion that I'm asking for here, by the way. It's something else.
Cess, maybe, at the back?
Right up the back there.
Cecily? Yeah.
You lose your faith.
Of course it disappears, it dies. Anything, you see, the entire of God's universe is created around truth, which is related to God. So if you have faith in something that's not a part of this universal truth, sooner or later it's going to disappear, it's going to die. What can you expect? Of course, all of God's laws are totally oriented around killing it.
For your own good.
For your own good, right? So having faith in something that is false is pointless. And in fact, all of God's laws of the universe are governed to try to destroy that kind of faith. God wants that faith gone. It's not even in harmony with the universe. It's not in harmony with the object of your own creation. So any faith that you have that is based on false beliefs or false opinions, that it is just going to die. Now, you see, with a lot of religious faiths on the planet, they are so intent on holding on to what is obviously false beliefs. So let's look at one of them. The false belief that there is a chosen race or a chosen religion. Like, it makes no logical sense. It makes no reasonable sense. It also makes no emotional sense, because it means that God would have favourites and play favourites, right? And so sooner or later, that idea or concept is going to have to die. It doesn't matter whether it's in the Bible or the Quran or any other book, it has to die sooner or later, because it's not a part of the truth of God's universe. God has these laws that are constantly working against the faith that most people on the planet have, because most people have a faith in things that are false. And that's great that we have this beautiful operation of God's laws attacking, if you like, or actually rejecting anything that's false. Sooner or later, people on the planet will recognise, oh yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Sooner or later, they will have to recognise these particular things, because all of the laws of the universe are constructed to try to get rid of these false concepts and ideas that we've imbibed from long times and periods in human history. They've all got to disappear. If we're ever going to have a loving operation on earth with every single person and every single country, many of these false beliefs have to disappear. Does that make sense? They've all got to go. And God's laws, the truth, the absolute truth about God, are constantly opposing these false beliefs and ideas. So any faith that you put in a false belief will be destroyed. Now, if you feel disillusioned, as you mentioned, Lily, feel disillusioned. But at the end of the day, it needs to go anyway, right? Every false idea you have from God's perspective needs to go. And you need to let yourself feel whatever emotion you feel. If you feel disillusioned, but let it go. If you feel angry about having been taught something that was false for many years, let that go. If you feel sad about having been taught something false for many years, let that go too.
Can you see how when we hold on to those emotions, it's almost like we want to stay out here? we want to hold on to the error that it's a bad thing, that what we had faith in proved to be not true. We want to hold on to the fact that that was wrong, when really, just as was just pointed out to you, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that you were brought the truth that, hey, that belief's not going to serve you. There's a better one that is actually based in truth.
And it's not only that it's not going to serve you, it's not going to serve all
serve
of
anything.
humanity.
Yeah.
Any faith that's false will resort to violence in order to try to keep itself in play. Right?
Can you relate to that? Things that you've had faith in the past and you've been willing to get angry about, willing to defend.
And perhaps even feeling like you want to punch someone in the nose about, and in fact, whole wars historically have been caused by this. The whole crusades of the Dark Ages, where the Christian faith was attacking the Muslim faith and so forth, that's all about this. False beliefs, holding up, wanting to retain their false beliefs and resorting to violence in order to perpetrate them. Right? Now, if we have a true faith, that would never happen. Because all of the true faith is all in the, if you like, all within the universal structure of God's truth. And all of God's truths are loving. So we would never resort to violence just to protect a belief, if we had true faith. Right? And this is a very important thing to understand about faith. So it's very important to understand this number one thing, and that is that every personal opinion you have, doesn't matter where it came from, sooner or later in your future it has to disappear if you're going to be in complete harmony with God's truth. Right?
And if we know that faith, based on false ideas and beliefs, is eventually going to have to die or leave us, the faith that we have in truths, the faith that is based in absolute truth, what's going to happen to that? It's only going to grow, isn't it? Because it reinforces itself with love and truth.
So that's a very important principle about faith.
You want me to hold?
But the sad thing is that most of humanity has not got the discernment and the knowledge about what the real truth is.
I don't agree. If you apply the ethical standards upon most things in humanity, you can see that straight away all of us would know. So, for example, the ethical standard is, I want to treat you the same way I would like you to treat me. Not how you treat me, but how I would like you to treat me. Now, if that's my standard, I would have a large degree of knowledge of truth already, right? So whenever you start yelling at me, I'd go, do I want to yell at her back? No, because her yelling at me doesn't feel very good, and I wouldn't want to, what I would like her to do is stop yelling at me. So I would never yell back at you as a result of that. Does that make sense? If I had that ethical standard. And I feel if we have ethical standards, and if all religions were based primarily on ethical standards first, we would not have any religious violence on this planet. None whatsoever. If we were all brought up with these ethical standards of, I'm going to treat, no matter what your beliefs are, no matter what your circumstances are, no matter how you act towards me, I'm going to treat you in the way I want you to act towards me, not in the way that you are acting towards me. Now, if that was taken as my standard, I would already have a lot of truth in my day-to-day life.
I'd know the truth about what's loving, what's kind, what's considerate, what's the way to treat my brothers and sisters.
And remember, we're saying that all truth is based upon love and loving standards. So if that's the case, if I'm just being ethical in my day-to-day life even, and without God, without any knowledge of God, doesn't matter, or with God, it doesn't matter which way, as long as I had ethical standards, I would already have a large degree of truth.
Okay, I get that.
Yeah, does that make sense? So I don't feel we can say, but we don't know, or the majority of people on earth don't know what's true. I can't agree with that. The majority of us do know, and we don't give a damn. Do you understand? We do know how we would like to be treated, but we are willing to treat other people badly, right?
Because ours is a special case.
Because ours, some kind of, we have some kind of unique circumstances. And we don't. Like, if we look at it properly, we cannot continue to justify bad behaviour from ourselves towards others, no matter how they behave towards us. Does that make sense? And if we continue to justify it, all we are doing is continuing the cycle of badness on the planet. So what happens normally on this planet is that one person yells at another. So that person yells back. And then the other person who yelled first wants to yell louder. So he yells louder. And the other person starts going, well, I can't yell louder than he is now. So what I need to do is get out something like a rock or a gun or a knife or a bazooka and blow him away. And this is how wars have begun, through this process of anger, rage, escalating into violent rage. And none of this works. We should know this by now. We're intelligent people. We know that this escalating violence doesn't work. But if you think about your own life, in your own day-to-day life, how often does it happen in your family? How often does it happen with your own husband and wife relationship, where one gets a little bit antsy, the other one escalates, and the other one escalates, and before you know it, there's, either crosswords or no words for a few days, like a Cold War situation inside of the family. And we've had whole countries like, Russia and America in a Cold War situation for years and years and years. And we don't go, well, yeah, that's probably because in our own families we often revert to Cold War situations and we don't see what's really going on. And what we need to do is take more stock of ourselves, not the other person, but of ourselves. We need to be more honest about our own emotional condition. Sorry?
I'm just thinking about all these countries quietly stockpiling weapons. How often we do that in our relationships. We quietly stockpile that.
It's like you've got an intellectual list of everything the other person has done wrong, and whenever some situation flares up, what do? You bring up the list, You did this 3 years ago and 5 years ago you did this and so forth. Isn't that the same as stockpiling a nuclear arsenal? And then you wonder why they're still stockpiling nuclear arsenals. Well, because your own emotions dictate that kind of action towards another, instead of letting things go, instead of letting these damaging, harmful emotional conditions go. And why don't we let them go? Because we have no faith that if we are loving, things will become good. So we have no faith in love. That's the reason why we don't let it go.